Bill Courtney, I guess for purposes of this, host of An Army of Normal Folks, CEO of Classic American Hardwoods, subject of Undefeated, author of Against the Grain, and Lisa's husband who does exactly what he's told.
Those are good titles.
Good.
What inspired you to create Army of Normal Folks?
Really, it wasn't my idea. Alex Cortez, who's with Iron Light Labs in Chicago, where you're from, um, interviewed me about 2 years ago. Typical interview. I've done 1,000 of them, and what was atypical about this interview, and I really can't remember what happened that day, but it was one of those things that something happens in the news cycle that um, the story is obvious, to any normal person what happened. Um, but as I was watching throughout the day, flipping back between Fox and CNN about the reporting of that specific incident, it was like we lived on two different worlds. And I am really sick of inaccurate narratives. I'm really sick of the power class of both our politics and our media, who are incented by an enormous amount of wealth and power, creating narratives that divide us. And so that was kind of in the back of my head. And Alex asked me, what are we going to do to fix this? The proverbial this,
Yeah.
And I said, you know, fancy people on CNN and Fox crafting narratives that divide us are never going to fix anything. Government has proven woefully inadequate and seem to be slipping further and further into really identity politics and division, and I mean that from both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think the only thing that's ever going to fix what ails us is with an army of normal folks seeing areas of need in their community and filling those gaps, regardless of who you are, what you look like, how you vote, who you love, where you're from, just an army of normal people coming together, convalescing around issues and fixing them. And so I said that, and Alex went off and they did their production or whatever it was, their show. And about 6 months later, he called back and he said, "You really feel the way you feel about what you said in the interview?" And I mean, I was 6 months ago, so I was like, "Uh-oh, did I cuss? What is he talking about?" And he reminded me of what I just said. And I said, "I absolutely do feel that way." And he said, "Well, I have an idea. There are amazing stories of normal, average people all over our country that do amazing stuff that fix areas of their community. And nobody ever tells their stories because they're not incendiary, they're not divisional, they're uplifting." And he gave me some demographics that like 88% of all mainline media, middle media, opinion media, and social media is negative or about crime. He said there's a vacuum of stories that are well produced, that are certainly going to have conflict, that but have an uplifting tone that I think there's a market for. We want to start this podcast. We want to name it An Army of Normal Folks, what you called, and we want you to host it. And we want to bring people from all over the country, tell their stories, do it in a very well produced way, and see if we can't kind of grow a true army of normal folks around the inspirational stories of people who are normal folks. And I said, "Yeah, that sounds fun, whatever." And, 5 weeks later, we're in the top 50 on the Apple charts, and it's just gone crazy. And so we've been live for about a year. So what inspired me? Really, the producer's idea based around an off-the-cuff comment I made one day when I was particularly exercised about our ridiculous narratives, and here we are.
I was in broadcasting and local TV for 20 years, and it's just brutal hearing those stories over and over and over again.
It's brutal in any metropolitan area. It's brutal in
Yeah.
Memphis. It's brutal in Chicago. It's brutal in DC. It's brutal everywhere. And you know, I, I'm sure you guys have a lot of sayings in that world, but it's clear that they believe blood and brutality and crime sells because that's
Yeah.
what they cover. And and um, I guess I get it. They've got to get their viewership up, and they've got to sell advertising, and profits are a necessary measure of any business's success. And at the end of the day, all of these news stations, national, regional, down to local, they're businesses, and they've got to sell stories um, that garner advertising dollars. But that in and of itself says something that I think is wrong with society, that
Yeah.
we gravitate to that stuff. And I'm just trying to offer, look, we're not telling Hallmark stories here. There is
Yeah.
there is there is difficulty in these stories. There's conflict. There's stuff that will make you cry. There's stuff that will make you laugh. But at the end of the day, we also want to leave the listener with the redemptive story. No, normal people have money problems. They have arguments. They have trouble at their jobs. They have trouble in their relationships. It's not like we're telling stories of perfect angels. We're telling stories of normal people who have all of those issues, but they don't do something great in their community because they're perfect. They do something great in their community despite the normal issues that we
Yeah.
as normal people have to overcome every day. And so I think part of exploring who people are, in addition to what they do, allows the listener to really relate because they're like, well, okay, that's just a normal person going through the same crap in life that I go through, and they're still able to do something positive in the world. If they can do it, so can I.
What are some of the things you've learned from your guests?
That's a great question. And unless this is a 17-hour podcast, I can't answer that question fully. But I will tell you, um, one is really verification, which is when people talk to me about Undefeated and the movie and the things that I have been blessed to do in my life. I have always said, and it is not some all shucks false Southern humility, it is true that I've gotten exponentially more out of the work that I've done in the community than I ever put into it. My eyes have been opened. My ethos has been changed. My approach has changed. And my maturity as a human being has changed as a result of the work. And the fulfillment and the growth that I've gotten out of that work has been greater than anything I ever put into it. To a person, every single guest I have has said the same thing, that their life has been enriched by the work that they did. And the irony is, we're talking about the lives that folks do the work folks do to enrich the lives of others. And the secret sauce is it comes back to you tenfold. That's one that is shocking that everybody shares that same experience. It's like every single person says that. The second thing is what I've learned that is so encouraging. Pew Research did. I wrote a op-ed on this, and I think it was in the New York Times. I can't remember, but anyway, I wrote an op-ed, and we did a little research for it. Pew Research says that like 80% of us realize that when we watch the news on TV, whether we're watching a left-leaning or a right-leaning news station, that the information we're getting is tilted toward one political viewpoint or another. 78% or 87% said when they read anything on social media, they recognize that there is likely falsehoods or at least embellishments in whatever report that they read. So Pew Research says that the vast majority of us know that the stuff we're getting fed whether it's social media, national media, or local media, has a bent. And Pew Research also says that more than 60% of the people that are engaged in community are starting to think that maybe our problems are too big to fix. And you would argue that the reason they think that is because of the news that they're listening to. At the same respect, we know what we're getting is wrought with inaccuracies. We think that those inaccuracies and the narratives we're getting may make what is going on in our culture and society today too hard to fix, and it's depressing. But the last thing Pew Research found is that 80-something% of respondents spend at least 3 hours a day cumulatively watching that news stuff or reading on social media. So what the research tells us is we know what we're being fed is crap. We know what we're being fed divides us. We know what we're being fed probably has inaccuracies and embellishments on it. Yet we sit there like sheep and flock to the very narratives that are tearing us apart. And what I have learned from my guest is, despite all of that, there is an enormous amount, thousands, tens and hundreds of thousands of people across our country that, despite all of that, have disconnected from it and said, I don't care who you are, what you look like, how you vote, who you love. I can serve you in my community. And you know what? I don't know what your politics are. I don't know what your religion is. I don't know what your orientation is, and I don't care. Because if you're doing something really good for someone who's not as advantaged in you as your community, I can celebrate that. And if we can, from a basis of servant leadership, from a basis of just being a part of an army of normal folks doing good things in our community, if we can find common ground around that and respect and appreciate one another around that, then that opens us up to being able to have civil, non-threatening conversations about this other stuff that people say can divide us, where we can find common ground there too. But that's the power of an army of normal folks, not the smart people in D.C. and New York feeding us all this crap. Just normal people engaging in society in their community to make it a better place creates a foundation of trust and respect that we as a society can grow from.
I wanted to talk a little bit about your documentary, Undefeated. How was that process of creating that, and also working with kids? What is it like motivating them not only for football, but beyond football?
Well, once again, I didn't have anything to do with it. I was showing up, minding my own business, coaching at the Center City School. When we arrived, it had 19 kids on the football team. Their previous 10-year record was 4 wins and 95 losses, so they're bad. On year 5, we'd gotten up to 70 kids. We started winning a bunch of ball games, and these guys from LA called and said they wanted to do a little ESPN 30 for 30 short on it, and we were like, well, that's cool, come on. When they got here, they said, yeah, we're not going to do a short on this. We want to make a full-fledged film. And I was like, all right, whatever. And they go back to Hollywood, and we think we'll never see those guys again. And they show back up right as summer practice starts, and they follow us around for 9 months, leave Memphis with 550 hours of film, and go back to produce a movie that we thought we might see some Wednesday at 3 a.m. on channel 522. I mean,
Yeah.
who cares about a Southern football team guy and team and whatever? And 7 months later, we're walking down the red carpet at the Academy Awards. So the process was 3 young guys who had one credit to their name, which was a documentary on the World Series of beer pong. That's a true story. Show up with cameras, follow us around, make a movie that we think nobody will ever see, and it ends up selling at the South by Southwest Film Festival in Austin for the most money a documentary had ever sold for in history. Got a lot of promotion, and we won the Academy Award. And since then, the speeches and my book and TV shows and everything else I've done since then is this kind of side life. All came as a result of that. And it's another example of I've gotten so much more out of the work that we've did than what I put into it. And it's not about money or having your name known or being all over film and TV and stuff. It really is about the blessing of it all is it gave me a platform to go out and talk in speeches and in my book and now on this podcast about things that I think matter.
Yeah, what is it like motivating kids?
Have you ever seen a football coach score a touchdown?
I have not.
I have never. I think I think some years ago, maybe in the 50s or 60s, one football coach did make a tackle. I'm pretty sure, like on a kickoff return, a coach got pissed off and came off the sideline as the guy was breaking away and made a tackle and got kicked out of the game. So I think I've seen one coach make a tackle in the history of football. But beyond that, coaches don't make tackles. Coaches don't throw passes. Coaches don't score touchdowns. Coaches don't win games. Players win games. So players win games. Coaches win players. And the way you win a player is you are unbelievably consistent. Yes, you got to coach X's and O's in football, obviously. You have to have an adequate discipline to achieve success on the football field. And you have to teach that discipline. And when I say discipline, I don't mean doing things right and wrong. Skill set. All right? So that is a primary job of a coach, no doubt. What I think is more than that is teaching character, commitment, integrity, dignity, teamwork, the value of hard work, all of the basic fundamentals and tenets that are in my book, that we discuss in my book. You coach those, and then you live by those, you walk those, you are consistent to those characters and tenets. You demand that your players are consistent. You hold your players accountable to those things. And over time, what you're developing is a group of kids that are certainly ready to go win football games, but vastly more important, are ready to go win at life long after the games are over. And when you do that, you start winning your kids. You start winning their hearts and minds. You start instilling in them things that are so much more important than winning football games. But when you win the kids and they build themselves around that those characteristic tenets of what I think it takes to win at life, and then you give them adequate instruction on how to win a football, they go win football games. But through the exercise of learning how to win at football through these tenets, they hopefully learn how to win at life. And so how do you motivate kids? You motivate kids about football, but you're constantly talking about what are you going to do after football's over? And you let your kids go win games, but you as a coach, you go win those kids.
How does it feel to not only in football but in your podcast and life to help others?
Yeah, I mean, it feels. I mean, obviously, the easy answer is it feels great. But the way it feels great is you have to be careful not to take yourself too seriously.
Yeah.
You know, the reward of that is not people patting me on the back and saying, "Look at these great things" and all that. The reward of that is, I'm 55 years old now. I've been coaching ball for 33 years. Kids I've coached are now fathers and coaches themselves. And the reward is watching a generational approach to the way I believe you lead and coach. and watching kids I coached when they were 16, 17, 18, now teaching the exact same stuff to the kids they're coaching and the kids they're raising. Um, that's what gets me going. I have a business too. I mean, all of this is a side gig. My real life is I have 130 employees. We do business in 42 different countries. We'll do 80 million in sales this year. I manage the same way I coach. Um, we built this business, started in 2001. We built this business the exact same time I started coaching at Manassas, and literally the same year. And um, it is an interesting uh, it is an interesting statement on this approach that um, we employed the same stuff with a bunch of 16, 17, and 18-year-old high school kids from the hood with the same people that work for me on a daily basis. And they have both proven relatively successful. And the reason I'm saying that is, you know, um, Dale Carnegie once said, you need to be a chameleon. And what he meant was, in a sales form, you need to be able to look this way to this kind of, and this way with this kind of people. You need to be able to act this way with the guys in the blue collar world, but be able to sit at a boardroom and act another way. And candidly, he's far more successful than I ever will be. But I completely disagree with that notion. I do not think you need to be a chameleon. I think you need to be what you are based on fundamentals and characteristics, regardless if it's in your business, if it's in the things you do in society, if it's in your public life, and really, most importantly, in your family life. And so we've just walked these tenets and fundamentals, whether it was football or business or society or family or whatever. And from whatever degree of success that, you know, people may say that I've achieved, the thing that is most satisfying is that I am now seeing at 55 years old those very tenets and fundamentals that I've employed, having a second generation of life with the people I've managed and coached and raised.
What do you do to help your own mental health?
Drink heavily. No. um, I, Lisa is my wife. We've been married since 92, so that's 8 and 24, 34 years now. Um, um, do you know if you get on an airplane in DC and you fly the whole world and come back to DC, all right? If you do that and your heading is off 3 degrees, just 3 degrees, by the time you were supposed to make it back to DC, you'll be landing in Newfoundland.
Hmm.
That's what 3 degrees does. Um, it is so important that your heading is set properly and you have a compass to keep you on that heading. Otherwise, you will end up in a place you don't even know how to get back from. Metaphorically, that's Lisa. She's my compass. We will test the integrity of the curbs of a road in our life every day. And you will scratch up your wheels and scratch up your curbs. The trick is, don't go over and get in the ditch, because you may not come out of the ditch and you're certainly going to tear a bunch of stuff up. Lisa's my compass. She's the one that I bounce things off of. She's the one that when she sees me maybe going down the wrong path, the wrong thing, loves me enough to say, hey, this is not your direction. So what I do for my mental health is I listen to the person who knows me the best and loves me the most, and I trust my compass. And I think everybody needs to have that compass in their life, someone who they trust enough to hear the hard stuff from, and that they recognize that hard stuff is coming to them from a place of love and adoration, rather than, uh, uh, just someone, a place of criticism. And so for me, it was the revelation that I have a person who loves me unconditionally. And because of that unconditional love, will call me out when I'm wrong. And if I have the temerity to be willing to listen, that I can stay pretty much on course. And and what that does for your mental health is you're not alone.
Yeah, I have that with my wife, Jen. She tells me how it is, but if I didn't have her, I wouldn't be on the path I am now. So,
That's it. You gotta have somebody in your orbit, a wife, a spouse, a best friend, a colleague, somebody that you love and that loves you, that you've invested in, that'll invest in you, that you trust enough to listen to, that serves as your compass. Otherwise, you'll end up Newfoundland.
I prefer not to end up in Newfoundland. Uh, where do you want to see your mission, say, in the next 3 to 5 years?
That's a hard question. I want my business to continue to grow and thrive because the people that make their livelihoods in it need that. Uh, I hope this podcast continues to grow um, because I want to grow this metaphorical army of normal folks because I genuinely do believe it's a way to fix what ails. I would love to see um, it be somewhat of a movement, but not a political movement, a
Yeah.
cultural movement. Um, and I want to see my kids. I got 2 kids. We've got 4 kids. 2 are married. The other 2, I want to get married. I want to see some grandchildren, and I want to watch. I want to watch my own children employ the fundamentals and tenets in their lives with the lives of their children, and if that alone is my legacy, I'll take it.
How can people reach out to you and learn more?
They can go to coachbillcourtney.com. On coachbillcourtney.com, there's an embarrassing amount of stuff that, you know, um, agents and publicists have put together, but you can reach me through that. Um, I'm asking your listeners, shameless plug here,
Oh, please.
go to an army of normal folks, normalfolks.us, subscribe to the podcast, download it and listen. I think you will be entertained. I think you will have your heartstrings pulled. I think you will laugh. I think you will find really well produced, interesting stories. All of my guests are face to face. I either fly to them or we fly in. They are long form. We have conversations about things that matter, and we reveal the amazing things these guests are doing in an effort to both entertain you and inspire you. So you can find me at CoachBillCourtney.com. You can find me at an Army of Normal Folks. You can follow me at Bill@normalfolks.us. Um, and you can find information on podcast, movie, my book, my speeches, all of it. And I hope people will check us out and see that we're one other thing so that you know, an Army of Normal Folks is a nonprofit, which is an odd way to put together a media thing, but I never wanted people to say I'm doing this so I could get a bunch of advertising dollars and royalties and all of that. It is a nonprofit entity, um, and we want to grow our listenership enough that we not only cover our production costs and put a little money on the bottom line, but that we make enough money that we can also give back to some of the very causes we're highlighting.